Welcome, Mayor Pete. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I want to first say how grateful I am to have the help of everyone on this call. You have all helped me multiple times, and obviously this campaign cycle is a particularly important one. We're less than 100 hours away from polls closing, and our effort to make sure we hold the House and pick up the Senate and elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is in full force. And when I think about the last 4 years, the critical importance of the House being like kind of the final protector of so much that we care about and holding this president accountable. And it's hard to imagine what this lawless and dangerous president would have been able to do without the Democrats controlling the House. So thank you for your help in making sure we continue to hold on to the House. And I'm going to talk a little more about what's happening around the country, but I want to first introduce our special guest because the demands on Mayor Pete's schedule, as you can imagine, are extraordinary. And so I'm incredibly grateful that he's joining us as my special guest for this event. When Mayor Pete announced his candidacy, I think more than anything, it reminded us of what America represented and the possibilities that America represents. And he ran a campaign that inspired everyone, that really demonstrated a deep sense of service and the power of his extraordinary intellect and the fact that he was able to connect and communicate with people, I think, unlike anyone in our generation. And he, in so many ways, represents the next generation of leadership in this country. And I think in a particularly dark period in our country's history, Mayor Pete was a ray of hope for a lot of us all across the country, especially as a member of the LGBTQ community, to see how magnificently this campaign was run and how seriously people considered his candidacy was such a transformative moment for our country. But that would not have happened without the grace and talent and skill of this extraordinary man. So I am honored that he's with us today. He has been working tirelessly on behalf of this ticket and helping Democrats, not only Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, but Democrats all across the country. And so it's a great thrill for me to welcome him to our final event to hold on to the House, the extraordinary Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
Thanks so much, Congressman. I've admired your leadership before, during, and since my time running for president, and I'm so excited to see a lot of familiar and friendly faces out here in the proverbial crowd, and maybe some folks I haven't had a chance to visit with too. So I appreciate the chance to just take a couple of minutes to speak with you. It's definitely a whirlwind few days. I was in Florida yesterday. We were on the so-called Space Coast and up in West Palm Beach, talking with a lot of folks from traditionally Republican constituencies, including a lot of military families and veterans ready for a change. I think tomorrow I'm headed to Pennsylvania, and we'll be pounding the ground virtually and in person in every different way that we can. But excited to virtually be in Rhode Island. Look, we know that Congressman Cicilline is in a pretty good shape politically at home. His constituents know what he's been able to do for them, but your generous support for this effort helps him redouble his efforts, turning around and helping other great candidates win. And it's so important that we are in all hands on deck mode right now. Remember all the hand-wringing about whether Democrats could keep it together in our big tent like a year ago? How can we possibly unite progressives and moderates and come together? And yet here we are, where we see progressives, moderates, independents, a stunning number of Republicans standing up for change because we know what's on the line. In different ways for all of us, this race has become so personal. You have your personal reasons, each of you, for viewing this as not just about who's up or who's down, but about our lives. For me, I think about my marriage that exists by the grace of a single vote on the Supreme Court. I think about family members who have pre-existing conditions and what would happen to them if the Republican lawsuit to destroy that coverage got its way. But each of us has our reasons. And the most important thing we can do right now, in addition to what you're generously doing by being part of this event and supporting David's efforts, is to reach out to everyone in our lives. We all have 2 or 3 people in our lives who maybe they're not deciding how to vote. Maybe they're not wrestling with that. Maybe they're deciding whether to vote, and making sure they know, if you can't convince them why it's personal for them, remind them why it's personal for you, because it's all going to come down to that. Yeah, the polls are encouraging. The polls are very encouraging, but First of all, we've learned our lesson about going into an election day believing that we were in good shape. And we also know that these polls don't come to much unless people actually get out there and vote. And so that's what we're going to see too. And when we do, by the way, I believe we could actually look back on this moment, this year, it was 2020, with pride. And I know that's a strange thing to say. I know we don't usually think of the word proud and the year 2020 in the same sentence or in the same thought. 2020 has been punching us in the face in so many cruel and upsetting ways. But the reason I say that is because I'm convinced that the story of 2020 hasn't been fully written yet. And the most important chapter in the story of 2020 could well be the one that we are writing together right now. That's what's at stake in this election. And if we get this right, we're not only going to head off the worst disasters that would await us in a second Trump term, including continued racial inequality and division, including the rejection of science that has made the response to COVID so lethal and so heartbreaking in this country, including the shattering of commitments to democracy at home and abroad. But it's not just about preventing the worst of what could happen. It's about unlocking the best of what could happen. That's what I really believe the 2020s could be about. We could be at the outset of a deciding decade for American life in the 21st century, characterized by real action on things like climate change and racial justice and pandemic response and U.S. global leadership and recommitment to democracy that could actually define this as an incredibly uplifting period in American life. I know it's hard to picture right now, but that's what's at stake. And the engine of a lot of that work is the House majority that David and his colleagues are part of, that has been doing this work the whole time. Of course, their work has hit a brick wall in the Senate, to say nothing of the White House, but it's going to be different if we deliver the way we hope to and want to and work for in the White House and in the Senate, and reinforce that Democratic majority in the House. Then that policy engine that has already acted on wages, has already acted on COVID relief, has already acted on climate and guns and democracy, only to be blocked, will now be an engine that is fully connected to where the rubber is meeting the road as we get these policies through and into our lives. And our lives will get better as a result. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm excited. That's why I'm thankful for. If you're the kind of person on this call, you're the kind of person who can barely even open your email inbox right now, or look at your text for all the different. And my name might be on some of those emails, so I know how much you're being asked for. But that's why, more than anything, I just wanted to thank you and urge you to redouble your efforts down these last few days in time, talent, and treasure. Because what we know is we're going to look back on this moment and be able to say we left it all on the field. So with that, Congressman, I'll turn it back over to you. Thanks again for your efforts and your leadership. And thanks to everybody here for being at his side.
Thanks so much, Pete. Great to see you, and thank you for everything you're doing. This is, as everyone knows, the most consequential election of our lifetimes. All of the things that Pete mentioned are on the line, and none of us wants to wake up on the morning of November 4th and think, if I had only done a little more, if I'd only made a few more calls, contributed a little more money, got more involved. So thank you for your support. I think tonight will result in additional resources to make sure we hold the House. I've raised this cycle about $4.5 million for House Democrats to hold on to our majority. That would not happen without the generosity of all the people on this call and many others. But I see the consequences of having the majority and the difference it's made. As the mayor said, we have a very robust agenda, very well developed, ready to move. We just need to elect a Senate that's going to embrace these policies and a president that will sign them into law. We have that opportunity in just a few days. And thanks to your help, we're going to have the resources necessary to do it. So thank you, everyone. I think, Amy, now we're going to open it up and happy to answer questions that people have. One of the other things that is going on that I know many of you are helping me with is I'm also running for the position of Assistant Speaker, which will be elected by the House Democratic Caucus on November 17th and 18th. And so that's also another effort underway. And you've all helped me in that, because as I can help both colleagues now and help to elect new colleagues, I will have their ear in terms of hopefully persuading them to support me in this leadership race. So your contributions have triple value in that way. So I'm incredibly grateful. So thank you all. And Amy, I'll turn over to you.
So I think Lizanne has a question. I'm going to ask her to unmute.
Oh my God, is that the Lizanne?
It is the Lizanne in the
Oh.
back room of the community center where I've been working as a poll worker all week. And I guess the question I have, it's been an amazing thing being here a million hours a day, and seeing the energy and the first time voters and the non-English speakers who are turning out with passion and patience to vote. And I don't want to look past Tuesday because everything is about how we get to Tuesday. But what I'd love to know, David, with you in the leadership, and Pete, with you taking on more and more of a leadership role in the party, what are we going to do to make sure that this many people show up to vote next time and the time after that? Because this energy can't dissipate. So how are we going to keep it going?
I think it's a great question. And everyone should know that Lizanne has been working every day in a polling station as a poll worker in New York, which is just extraordinary, and speaks fluent Spanish. So she's been a very valuable member of the volunteer team there. And it's a great example of just everyone doing everything they can. I think there's two things. One is, and maybe the most important thing is, to deliver results, to get things done that improve people's lives. I mean, what we have to do is demonstrate to people that when you vote, when you demand that your voices are heard and you elect the right people, those people then act to improve your lives. And so, it's no mystery. We have passed over 600 pieces of legislation. About 350 of those bills are sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk. And they range in everything from HR 1, the biggest ethics reform since Watergate, to universal background checks, to 10 healthcare bills that will reduce the cost of prescription drugs and protect coverage for pre-existing conditions, reauthorizing the Violence Against Women Act, equal pay for equal work, a major infrastructure bill. So I think the best way we can make sure this momentum continues is show people that it mattered that they voted because they elected people who are actually going to deliver on the urgent priorities that face them and their families. I think the second thing we have to do is we have got to make it easier to vote in this country. I mean, the idea that the Republican Party has overtly and explicitly engaged in efforts to make it more and more difficult for people to vote is unconscionable. And, you have states like Georgia where people are in line for 8 hours. There is no excuse that in a democracy as well developed as ours in the year 2020, that any citizen of this country should be expected to wait in line for hours to exercise his or her right to vote. And we ought to take this issue on, and we will. We did some of it in HR 1, but I think you'll see additional efforts just to make it easier for people to participate in our democracy. And so I think if we do those two things, respond to the needs of the American people by getting things done that matter in their lives with a really aggressive agenda, and then two, make sure that the mechanics of voting are made so much easier with things like automatic voter registration, early voting, online voting, all those things to make it easier for folks to have their voices heard. I think those two things together will ensure that the momentum continues. And having great poll workers.
Barbara Fields has a question and she's unmuted herself. So we'll let Barbara go ahead.
Of course. Thank you, David. First of all, thanks to you and to Mayor Pete. To have two gay men out front on the choice issue is absolutely fabulous, remarkable, and there's so many of us who are incredibly grateful, and we need you now more than ever on that issue. But what I wanted to ask about today is the rising crisis in housing. We didn't get to talk about that when I saw you last, and I am very worried about the fall and the winter and the opportunity for landlords to evict people. And I'm wondering what some of your thoughts might be, what we can do, because I'm not working in that area anymore full-time, as you know, Congressman, but it is something people are asking me about all the time.
Yeah, it's a very serious issue. And one of the priorities that we included in all of the COVID relief, but in particular in the HEROES Act, both the first bill we did and the second HEROES bill, it was a significant investment, $150 billion, to help both in rental assistance and mortgage assistance in the short term, and then additional investments for the production of more housing. But they're in the middle of a global health pandemic where one of the directives of the public health experts is to stay isolated or stay at home, especially if you're not feeling well or you've been exposed. That's hard to do if you don't have a home. And so this idea of kind of the implications of a lack of affordable housing in the context of a global health pandemic are just multiplied tenfold. And so it's an opportunity, obviously, to provide rental assistance, mortgage assistance, but also to be sure that we're investing in the creation of more affordable housing. And I think in a lot of ways, what COVID-19 has kind of laid bare for everyone in the country and frankly all over the world to see was the grotesque income inequality that exists in this country, the grotesque health income disparities, housing inequalities. And so I hope in addition to COVID relief that responds to the emergency right now, which we obviously have to do, that it will also spark a real call to action by everyone in the Congress of the United States at the local and state level as well, to really begin to address the pernicious inequality that exists in all these areas, particularly in housing, and to use this as an opportunity to really address the systemic problems that have caused the kind of lack of access to quality healthcare and affordable housing and the disparity in the employment and housing, in the employment market, and all of the things that were revealed by COVID-19. So it's a real priority for us. It's going to require substantial federal investment, and this probably better than everyone on this call. Housing matters because it relates to your ability to hold a job, your ability to attend school and be successful, your ability to maintain your own health. So housing is the centerpiece of family life, but it's also the centerpiece of strong communities. And if we don't address this housing crisis, because it's a crisis, in Rhode Island, it's particularly serious, but it's serious all across the country. If we don't address this, it is impossible to build strong communities and strong families without access to affordable housing. And so that's why it's in the HEROES Act, and that's why it will be a big part of the infrastructure bill we do next year as well.
So Sarah Morris has a question. I'm going to have her unmute.
Thank you, Amy. Mr. Chairman, so good to see you.
Nice to see you.
I want to thank you, especially on behalf of local radio stations around the country, including Providence, for your extraordinary leadership on behalf of local journalism, including in your report in the investigation that you've conducted. And we greatly appreciate your commitment to ensuring that, local news is not overcome and overwhelmed as we move into this digital universe we're in. Just as a fun point, I wanted to introduce my son, Cullen Morris, who is on the line. Cullen, say hello.
Hi, Cullen.
Hello, Congressman. Very nice to meet you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank
That's
you
like
for having
child abuse, making your son come to a political event like this.
You'll see the evil genius I have. So Cullen is very often mistaken for Mayor Pete.
Oh, how funny. All
Look
right,
at
I
this.
see it. Yeah.
At age 15, the two of them are like,
Wow,
my mother
look at
actually
that.
saw a picture of Mayor Pete and was like, I didn't see that picture of Cullen. So I invited him to come on. Cullen's also
Nice.
been politically active himself, but I thought he would, get a kick out of being able to say hello, and appreciate
Thanks.
Amy you letting me include him.
Thanks, Sarah. Thank you for being on. You caused everyone from Rhode Island to laugh when you called me Mr. Chairman, so thank you. They don't take me seriously here, but I'm glad you do.
I do, and I'm already planning my Block Island vacation next summer.
There you go.
So thank you
Representative
again.
Carson, nice to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Okay.
And I know Mary Cherry, my campaign manager's mother, is on, so thank you, Mary, for joining us. Hi, Jane Moffett and Becky Menard.
We do have a
And
few
I
more
see-
questions.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
There's a lot of
And
questions.
Sharon with her new grandchild. I'm sorry, go ahead, Amy.
So Kim Keck has a question.
Okay.
I just asked her to unmute.
I think I am. Yes. Hi, Congressman. Thank you for your leadership. My question has to do with what happens for the rest of the year. I hope, I don't know, fingers crossed we have this blue tsunami that you were articulating a moment ago, but we still have to get through the rest of 2020. And I'm wondering if in any reality, some version of the HEROES Act ends up in the Senate, or any package ends up in the Senate, even though we may be in this limbo timeframe between now and January. Any insight to that?
Yeah, I think there's no question that we have to do a COVID relief package, another package. The speaker has continued to negotiate even through today. She, despite the fact that the president said, I'm calling off negotiations, and then Mitch McConnell said, I have 20 senators that won't support a single dollar. She's been persistent about meeting with Secretary Mnuchin virtually and trying to craft an agreement. I think there's no question that people recognize it has to happen. when you have folks like Jerome Powell at the Fed explaining that if we don't do another big relief package, it will significantly delay our recovery and will in fact cost more kind of over the long term as a result of the loss of that economic activity. And more than all of that, people are really, really hurting. I mean, families are literally facing, evictions and foreclosures, and people are out of work. Tens of millions of people losing unemployment benefits, and it's really a catastrophic situation for millions and millions of Americans. So I hope that after the election, there will be an understanding of that. I think a strong Democratic victory is going to send a clear message to our recalcitrant Republican colleagues. This has to happen. But I hope the attitude isn't just wait till January until we have a new administration, God willing. We've got to act now. Every day we wait, people are suffering and hurting. So I think there's a lot of interest. I think the speaker was genuinely disappointed, as we all were. We thought we could get an agreement before the election, regardless of who it benefits, just because people need help. But it looks like the president and the Republicans in the Senate are not going to agree to do anything before then. So, but it just can't be that we don't do anything till January. That is just, the harm will be too great.
Thank
I
you.
think Sharon Wilkes had the next question.
Hi, Uncle Chairman David.
I think Sharon doesn't have a question. She's showing up that.
No,
beautiful
this is Marguerite, but in protecting Marguerite as she gets older, I know you're moving things with hate speech on the internet. And I was glad to hear Facebook finally woke up and smelled the coffee, but it's obviously a little late. Is there going to be more, mandatory or oversight to make sure that hate speech that incites violence and harm to people is monitored better?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, we just completed a 16-month investigation on these large digital platforms. And what we learned is, these are companies that have real monopoly power. They have, because they have such market dominance, they basically decide what people are going to see, who is going to see it. They pick winners and losers in kind of our economic system. And they can do all that because they just have enormous power as the gatekeepers into these platforms. And, because they don't have real competition, they have not paid close attention to things like curating and making sure that hate speech is not promoted or complete misinformation or disinformation is spread. And so this is a real issue, and it's one of the things that we'll address in legislation I've already introduced. And I know there's going to be other legislation, but I think you will see significant reform in this space, thankfully, because it's really contributing a lot to not only divisions in this country and around the world, but there are examples where these platforms have facilitated genocide because of information that's shared. So we have to take this threat seriously.
Thank you. She agrees.
Great to see you, Sharon.
Same here, David.
Allison Eichler has a question.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you so much for putting this together. This was a great meeting. And I just always have my same question, which is, during the transition, what are the guardrails that are going to protect my son, who's being deployed as a special operations pilot to Afghanistan in early December? I'm so petrified that things are going to go off the rails. I don't know if we're fighting the Taliban, we're fighting ISIS, we're fighting the Afghans, we're pulling all the troops out. All this stuff is being said. Do you have any sense that somebody will be in charge if he fires Esper the day after the election?
Yeah, first of all, everyone, it's a good opportunity to say thank you to the heroic men and women who serve our country in the armed forces. Allison's son is one of those great heroes, and as she knows, entire families serve when someone is serving because they live with the anxiety and the worry and all that. So, and I think it's one of the most difficult things about this administration is the men and women who are risking their lives to keep us safe around the world. Have our commander-in-chief who has never seemed to understand the complexities of the world or been willing to invest in time studying important issues and respecting the service of men and women in uniform, and even been reported that he referred to them as suckers and losers, though he avoided his own military service. So I think, look, there's a lot of reason to be worried about what happens between the election and the inauguration of the new president. The best defense against that is a big, huge victory for Democrats, because I think it will make, I don't think it will change his behavior. He's, I think, going to behave the way he's going to behave. What I think we want to do is change the behavior of the Republicans who have basically enabled him. And to the extent that they see a strong rejection by the American people of this president and of the policies of this administration and of the Republicans who have enabled him, I think they will then hopefully recognize that they have a responsibility during the lame duck to work with Democrats to be sure that we are protecting against the worst excesses of this president. But I think we have a lot of reason to worry. I mean, there's no reason to believe he's going to behave like a responsible adult. And if he is aggrieved by the fact that he's lost the election and, God, I think we don't have any idea what he'll try to do, but it will be the responsibility of the Congress of the United States to stand up in a forceful way. And I'm hoping a strong Democratic victory is going to cause our Republican colleagues finally to understand the oath they took to defend our country and the Constitution and to work with us to protect against the worst excesses of this president. And I think you'll also see a great number of people who work for the government who maybe previously were unwilling to speak up. Now that they've seen him lose, will either speak up, resign. I think you'll see people expressing their unwillingness to just go along. So all those things taken together, I think, will provide the kind of guardrails that we need during those months.
Thank you.
So,
Mayor Giuliano, I feel like you should say something as the former mayor of Tempe, Arizona. Mayor Giuliano was a Republican mayor elected as an out gay man in Arizona a long time ago. He was a trailblazer for a lot of us. So it's really great to have him on the call.
Thank you. I haven't been a Republican for a very long
I
time.
know, but doing that then was not easy.
Back where Arizona's on its way to blue, and I think this is going to be the year that it happens. So we're excited about it. Thank you.
Thanks. Great to see
Thanks
you.
for all
Yes.
your work and all you're doing.
Thank you.
Appreciate that you were willing to go on from mayor to serve in the Congress and do great things in that role as well.
Thanks. Great to see you.
So I know Pam Lauria has a question.
Hi, Congressman. Thank you for including me. As always, one of my biggest issues is the concern about gun violence, and I'm particularly concerned about that post-election because I think that we will win. I'm not going to try to jinx anything, but I'm worried about the ensuing violence from there. As chair of the Balance Democrats, I had to receive training this week on what to do about voter suppression, including if someone shows up at a poll with a gun. We know that Walmart has stopped selling ammunition and guns because they're worried about what's going to happen after the election. So that's my short-term concern. Obviously, long-term concern is the explosion of gun sales and what are we going to do about these weapons. So I'd just like to hear your thoughts about what you think short-term and long-term we can do.
Well, we, of course, passed universal background checks, which is an easy thing that's, wildly popular, supported by 95% of gun owners. It's not even controversial. The only place that's controversial is in the Republican Senate cloakroom because Mitch McConnell refuses to bring that bill up. I think when we take the Senate and we win the House and add some members and we win the White House, we will move forward on a substantial body of legislation. I hope it will include my assault weapons ban, which I introduced and has 218 co-sponsors in the House right now. Vice President Biden has said he will sign the assault weapons ban, but we have dozens of bills to keep guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them, to get rid of high capacity magazines, assault weapons, and and look, this is a really important issue. If we are privileged enough to take the leadership in the House and the Senate and the White House, the American people expect, and they have a right to expect, that we will enact meaningful gun safety legislation, not just universal background checks. I think universal background checks might happen during the lame duck. I think the balance of that stuff will have to happen when we take the Senate back. But this is a #1 priority for me, and I know for the House Democrats.
Mark Falzone has a question.
Congressman, first, thank you for being such a champion for scenic beauty in this country. You are our #1 supporter in Congress, and we thank you for that. And just wanted to ask what your thoughts are on what would happen with surface transportation reauthorization bill in the next Congress. Will it move quickly? Will it be big? What are your thoughts there?
Yes, I mean, obviously this depends again on the election. If we win the presidency, take back the Senate, hold on to the House, I think we will have a massive infrastructure bill. We passed the Moving Forward Act out of the House, which was $1.5 trillion. You know, a significant, really transformative transportation bill. I think you'll see something even bigger post-COVID, because this will be a really key way to get people back to work by rebuilding the infrastructure of our country. And so it's also something which in general there has been pretty strong bipartisan support to do, and something I think we'll do quickly because record number of people are out of work. So I think the answer is yes. I expect this is something that will be done in the first 100 days of a new administration. And I think there will hopefully be a lot of bipartisan support for it. And hopefully will include a lot of Scenic America's priorities. We're going to make sure that happens.
Thank you.
Okay, so Dane Nichols has a question.
Hi. Hi, everybody. Hello, David.
Hi, Dane.
Really more just a piece of information, but I was on a call the night before last with an organization called Keep Our Republic. And it's an old friend of mine, Tim Worth, and a bunch of former members of government have started this. And it addresses what to do when and if Trump refuses to leave office. But it also is full of hopeful steps we can all take, and educating people are thinking ahead. I know everybody who's actually working in Congress, like you, David, doesn't have time necessarily to think about this, but these are all people who have been in government and are thinking about exactly what we're all scared of. The other thing is it has terrific information on how to vote, where to vote. You know, anybody can get any information. So I'm just putting in a plug for Keep Our Republic.
Yeah, no, that's great. You know, there's a lot of work being done with respect to kind of what happens if the president, you know, a lot of it might be litigation, but I think the reality is people ask me that all the time. What happens if the president doesn't accept the results of the election? And the answer is it's not up to the president. It's irrelevant whether he accepts or not. This is a decision made by the American people. And I think you will see once that decision is made, all of the, you know, kind of different parts of government will move to execute that determination by the American people. So I don't actually have much fear that he's going to somehow prevent the election results from being executed. He's going to be unhappy. He's going to file lawsuits. He's going to mischaracterize it. He's going to claim he won on election night when he hasn't. Like, we have to be prepared for all of that. But in the end, the American people, the voice of the American people, will ultimately decide who our next president is. But that organization is terrific, and there are others that are really invested in this work. And the good news is, I think the voter turnout that we're already seeing is evidence of exactly what I thought. You know, I said 4 years ago, to be exact, that I think Donald Trump was elected because in part people thought we lived in a self-executing democracy. And as long as they voted or, you know, gave money to someone they believed in, or maybe volunteered on a campaign, as long as they did something, that it sort of worked. And even if they didn't do any of that, they never had any worry that we weren't going to live in a democracy. And I think Donald Trump's election showed us that our democracy is not self-executing. That if we're going to hold on to it, it requires the active, sustained engagement of everyone. And I think we learned that lesson as citizens of this country. And you're seeing a level of engagement, not just in voting, but in participating in campaigns and contributing and supporting organizations that are doing important policy work. I think if at the end of this we survive these 4 years somehow magically, it will actually have strengthened our democracy, because I think never again will people take that for granted, and people will remain engaged in it. And that is good for our country. It's good for our democracy. It produces more responsive government. So, you know, it's the silver lining. I mean, it was an ugly 4 years to have to live through, but if it caused people to understand their responsibilities as citizens of this country, then I think that's a good outcome in the end.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dane.
Yeah, thank you.
So Jim Toback has a question.
Hi, David.
Hi, how are you?
Great. Thanks for your service. You've been a terrific congressman for Rhode Island and obviously for the country, and we can't tell you how much we all appreciate it. taking off that hat, I actually need a psychiatrist for the next few days. I'm not sure if you're trained as a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but focusing specifically on Tuesday, can you give an overview of, or do you have a sense of how that's going to play out? Just so I don't have to start asking you to give me a script to calm my nerves.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way it's going to play out, I predict, and we're trying to kind of prepare people for this, is, the president has spent the last several months totally undermining the U.S. Postal Service, totally undermining voting from home or voting by mail, to try to suggest to people that it's not trustworthy and it's fraught with corruption. None of that is, of course, true. But the result of that, which was intentional, is he's trying to discourage his supporters from voting from home or voting by mail. And so most of his voters are going to show up on election day. The reason he wants that to happen is because the first votes to be tallied are the machines. And so he will be leading in a lot of swing states early in the evening or even later in the evening, because the mail ballots in many states will have not been counted yet. And so what he's going to do is he's going to declare victory. He's going to say, I've won this state and I've won this state. And my guess is he's going to give a speech and saying, I've won, I've been reelected. The ballot should only the votes that get cast tonight should be counted. He'll file some lawsuits to try to stop the counting of mail ballots, an absurdity. But this will be to create confusion and to claim he's won. We just have to keep people calm and say, the election has not been decided. The election will not be decided until every vote that has been cast is counted. That is going to take some period of time in states, and every American has a right to have their vote counted. And we have to wait the results until all the votes are counted. When those votes are counted, my prediction is he will have lost, and he will then go into the second part of his argument. Is like, see, I won, but those corrupt mail ballots, this is what the Democrats do. I told you they were going to steal the election through corruption in these mail ballots, and it just won't be true. But that's what he's going to say. So I just think you were trying to kind of prepare everyone to anticipate this is going to happen, and just to remind everyone that every person's vote is valid, whether you vote in person, whether you vote by mail, whether you vote early, and all votes must be counted before the election can be decided. And no matter how much Donald Trump doesn't want that to be the case, that is the law, and we have a long tradition. There's nothing more sacred than voting, and there's nothing more sacred than counting every vote. But just being prepared for what he's going to do, which is basically claim he's won, and then when it turns out he didn't win, to say, see, this is all these corrupt mail ballots, which also won't be true.
So we have time for one more question. I know Zai and Ali had a question they'd like to ask, if they'd like to.
Hi, Congressman. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Of course.
My question is about court packing. It's been touched upon that a lot of people in this room and even outside of this room are reliant on prior Supreme Court decisions for their basic fundamental rights and abilities to, marry, love who they want, make decisions about their body. And we've seen that new justice has been pushed through in the past couple of days. And I'm just curious if you have any thoughts you'd like to share about if we do have a blue tsunami, the potential of court packing, changing the composition of the Supreme Court.
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is I would very much encourage people not to use that term court packing. The court packing that's been done has been done by the Republicans. They packed onto this court a record number of unqualified judges in the district court, in the Court of Appeals. They denied Merrick Garland his seat on the court, and they jammed through Amy Coney Barrett in kind of unprecedented speed. The Republicans have packed the courts. And so we ought to acknowledge that and condemn it. But that's the court packing that's taking place. What I think we need to look at, and Vice President Biden has said this, he would create a commission to look at reform of the court. Look, we cannot have a Supreme Court that is out of step with the American people on every major issue, whether it's reproductive health care, whether it's LGBT equality, whether it's environmental justice, whether it's voting rights. I mean, the ability of the Supreme Court to sustain its legitimacy is in part because the American people have revered this as an institution, and it's been a kind of pioneer in a lot of important progress in our country by some groundbreaking decisions. It has never been the case that the Supreme Court of the United States is so out of step with where the country is headed. And it's frankly, if you care about the Supreme Court, you have to be in favor of a rebalancing of the court and reforms in the court that will ensure that it reflects the kind of the judgments of the American people. Otherwise, people are going to be like, who are these people? They start to reverse Roe versus Wade, start to gut voting rights further, start to reverse LGBT equality. People are going to be like, we're not following that. I mean, it's going to cause a crisis of their legitimacy. So I think the way we should speak about it is, this is an effort by the Republicans, first and foremost, to take away health care from tens of millions of Americans. The President of the United States made it very clear. He said, I am going to appoint people that are going to declare the ACA unconstitutional. He said that publicly, and he got Amy Coney Barrett for that reason. She will be on the court that will hear a case in 2 weeks that will just strike down, this is a litigation brought by the Republicans and the president, to have the ACA declared invalid, in which case tens of millions of Americans will lose their health insurance. Millions more will lose coverage for pre-existing conditions. Young people will be kicked off their parents' plans. This will have devastating consequences. This is their goal. And so I think our answer should be, look, everything is on the table when it comes to protecting access to quality, affordable health care. Everything is on the table, in my view, when it comes to protecting a woman's right to choose. Everything is on the table when it comes to LGBTQ equality and marriage equality. And so we shouldn't take anything off the table. We should be prepared to look at real reforms of the court, a rebalancing of the court so it actually reflects the direction of this country and the sentiments of the American people, and to respond to the court packing that the Republicans engaged in. So, Amy? I don't know what happened. Did we lose Amy? I think we did lose Amy. Okay. Well, I'll end then by first saying I want to introduce Jeff Larrabee. Most of you know on the phone because he's hounded you on my behalf for money. I think Amy Gabar, you all know for the same reason, my Rhode Island finance director. Jeff does my DC and national stuff. Anthony Cherry, my campaign manager, is on here. So I just want to say thank you to all of them. Bill Vareka has been my finance campaign coach here along with Don Schweitzer for the last decade. And so thank you, Bill, again, and Allison. But you have all been incredibly generous and wonderful to me. And I've asked you repeatedly for help and for financial assistance to help me both get reelected, help us hold on to the House, and now in my effort to become Assistant Speaker. And you have repeatedly said yes, and I will never take that for granted. I'm incredibly grateful. I work every day, I hope, in a way that honors the generosity that you have shown me, and I just feel very privileged to have you as friends, and obviously to have the privilege of representing our great state in the Congress. So thank you. On to victory. Big November 3rd for all of us. Thank you so much.